Most likely you know this garish device, Jesus, as the pernicious plaything that injured your idiot nephew. But to the youth of today, skating boards such as this one represent nothing less than freedom. But what if I said that these boards could take you not merely to a local shopping mall, but to another dimension, where your nephew might mangle not merely his testicles, but his very brain? Preposterous? Hardly. Welcome to Quinns Quest! All right, everybody, shut up! We have reviewed some terrific games on Quinns Quest Season 1, but today I would like to announce that Slugblaster, a game where you play an interdimensional skate crew trying to hit the big time, is the winner of Quinns Quest Season 1. Now, what does this award mean? I'm still figuring that out. Basically, it means that I've played a lot of games this year that impressed me, games that felt cutting edge. Slugblaster feels like a game sent back in time from a brighter future. It's not just that this game is hilarious. It's not just that it helped me and my friends have big feelings at our table. And it's not just that I think it'll appeal to more kinds of people than most TTRPGs. It's that it achieves all of that by thinking differently. And I'm talking differently systemically, stylistically, and thematically. But have I played it? Yes! You bet your damn pencils I have! God! I finished a campaign of Slugblaster lasting 7 sessions. Look, the collector's edition box is the GM screen. Look at that, that's nice. This game can run longer if you want it to, but by and large, like Heart, which we reviewed a few episodes ago, this is a game that's designed to be finished. From session 1, Slugblaster plays like you're lighting the fuse of a singularly charming bomb, and then carrying that bomb as you career along to a spectacular conclusion, sparks flying the whole way. And then it wants you to say goodbye to those characters through whom you experience this wonderful world. Most likely because those characters have simply grown up. And chances are you're gonna feel real sad about that. But that's okay, because then you get to play another great TTRPG and get sad about that one ending, and again, until your soul feels like an expired soda pop full of sweet grief. So, how do you play Slugblaster? Well, at its simplest, and if you look at how long this video is, you know it's not going to stay simple for long, Slugblaster is Rick and Morty's Pro Skater. It is D&D meets Bill and Ted. In this game, slugblasting is the hot new teenage craze of using do-it-yourself portal tunneling gear to go into other dimensions for no reason other than because these dimensions are cool, or because you want to seem cool, or because you actually are cool, but what's the point if people don't know it? Now, in this game, all the players are going to be part of the same skate crew together, but the first thing you pick in character creation is what you bring to that crew. Whether you're the smarts, the grit, the chill, the guts, or the heart. And then you pick your skater's signature gear from a selection that's so sick, it's almost impossible to choose from. Do you want sneakers that let you remix time? Do you want a gun that lets you futz with reality like you're using Photoshop? Or do you want just a cool jacket? A jacket that acts as a prism and can split you into 3d6 versions of yourself. An entire basketball team made of you. Although the book states they are, quote, difficult to control. Is that the only thing your jacket does? No, loser, you're slugblasting now. With the right loot, you can upgrade the hologrammatic emitters of your jacket to reflect light and lasers, project translucent graphics and VFX around you to stylize your tricks, or flashbang the cops. I didn't know I wanted an RPG where my entire personality could be a sweet duster, but there you go. And we've been playing what for the last 20 years? Warlocks? they have played us for absolute fools. So once you've got your characters and your special gear, you then move on to naming your skate crew, which is obviously even harder and led to the players in my group panically rebranding themselves in sessions 2 and 4, which is like so teenage. So then once you've done character creation, you and your friends are going to use this basic slug blasting equipment that you probably made in someone's garage to painstakingly map out the dimensions around your painfully uncool home dimension, which you might know as Earth. And then in the course of play, you're trying to get more cool tools and abilities, and hopefully not get too heavily bruised or burned or slimed in your encounters with freaks like Sudsy, a soap monster that wants to clean all the nasty organic gunk that your pristine skeleton is absolutely caked in, or quantum centipedes which want to digest your future, starting with the best possible outcomes. This isn't even a game about fighting. It's a game, if anything, about running away with the velocity of a missile. And yet, the monsters in this book are better than in games where fighting is the entire point. As the GM, I had particular fun with the Math Panther, which is a cat which multiplies the number of yous it's chasing and the number of its you are running away from, and then collapses reality back down just the two of you if any of them catch you. Great. And let's not forget about Mr. Young, an ancient vampire who pretends to be a cool teenager while sucking down on your youthful exuberance. And in the margin, the designer has written, "I swear this isn't me." My players actually defeated Mr. Young by just acting so old and tired that they put him off his food. So, the moment-to-moment game of Slugblaster is simply players exploring cracked-out dimensions and then doing whatever they think is cool. And a lot of that can be skateboarding tricks, but it could just as easily be graffiti, or science experiments, or crime. So that sounds like a fun idea, right? But I'm here to tell you today that it's more than that. Because what this idea does in being different and working so well is it breaks RPGs out of the shackles that say they all have to be about combat or investigation, or even problem solving. It's a game about making problems to try and be cool. I spoke to designer Mikey Ham about where this idea came from in a section that I like to call, "What were you thinking?"
That wasn't where Slugblaster started. I was trying to figure out why would these kids go into these other dimensions that are clearly so dangerous. Because I used to have in an old version of the game, you would get wounds and you would get these red wound dice and stuff like that. And I kept thinking the tone of this doesn't quite fit the idea of these being kids, until I thought of skateboard culture. And I was working at a skate park for a few years, and I just thought of in skateboard videos, if someone gets hurt, it's like a feature of the video. They'll go and zoom in on the blood and stuff and once I realized that, I realized okay, so then the currency is not gold pieces, the currency is popularity.
So, the actual slug blasting of Slugblaster, which is the moment-to-moment action, is a blast with its kickflips and grinds, but when this game stops, excitedly feeding you jello shots, and you start looking at the long-term scaffolding of a campaign, you start glimpsing this game's subtlety. But to be clear, if this game didn't have any subtlety, if it was just you exploring more and more gnarly dimensions with cooler and cooler gear, getting more and more fans, if Slugblaster was just about splitting slugs in half by nose grinding down them at 100 miles an hour, I would still be having a great time with it. But all of that stuff is just the bright candy shell around this particular M&M. Let's talk about the meat, the flesh, the guts. So first off, all of this interdimensional skateboarding stuff is a metaphor. We love our metaphors here at Quinns Quest. Now before I proceed, that does not mean that you're doing any of this stuff unironically. You get to be fully brain dead playing Slugblaster. You can kickflip over a landmine and then accidentally delete your school's math department with a weird laser and be like, "Oh no, the principal's gonna freak!" But when this game isn't being as dumb as Pop Rocks, it is offering a day-glow exaggeration of how outsiders don't get skate culture. Let me explain. You can set your campaign of Slugblaster in whatever town you want, in whatever year you want, but what is always true is that the sport of Slugblasting has just been invented and adults don't get why it's cool. They do not understand why you would put your malnourished, hormone-ravaged body in grave danger to land that one trick that's gonna make you a legend. And they neither understand nor respect this bizarre community of outsiders that you would lose a limb to be inside of. In this game, your crew might make friends with psychic alligators in a fractal Rainbow Road gemstone island in the sky, and when you come home, you can expect your mum to say, "Yeah, hon, that's great. Did you do your Spanish homework?" Or they might Shanghai you down to your local Sunday school because they've heard this slug blasting thing is satanic. One of the moments I first fell in love with Slugblaster, I remember exactly where I was sat. It was during session 1, and I realized with a sudden flutter of excitement and nerves that I was about to get to play every single one of my player characters' families. I'ma be your awkward ass dad. I get to be your smothering mum, your dickhead brother who can still beat you up and is compelled to do so because he's going through his own shit. These are great NPCs to play. You have all the power in the dynamic as the GM. Your players are going to be bringing so much baggage to the relationship, and they are going to be so invested in what happens. I have played in my time as a GM ogres and mermaids and demigods and devils, and I have never felt so empowered as being an exhausted suburban mum banging on your door to have a conversation that neither of you want to have. Little pro tip here for GMs who love to make their players squirm. If you set your campaign of Slugblaster in a time before the internet, you can roleplay scenes where their parents try and tell them about sex. Sarah, I don't know what goes on in those other dimensions, but do you know what this is? This is a condom. So, what all of this means is that an evening of Slugblaster, at least at my table, is only about 2 hours of actual slug blasting, and then 2 hours of what happens when you get home, including scenes where you have to try and explain to your nan where all of these third-degree burns came from, and she genuinely believes you got them fist-bumping Beelzebub. And this is Slugblaster. It is a cocktail of childish fruit juice action and thought-provoking metaphorical liquor. And at your table at home, you can have exactly as much of each as you want. At the extreme ends, for you, that might mean playing Slugblaster with the tone of like an all-ages cartoon, like a Steven Universe-y thing. Or at the other end, you can have Slugblaster that's all about sex and drugs, and we're just getting out of the house with your board to be free involves screaming fights with your conservative parents. But wherever you and your friends find yourself on this sliding scale, you will feel like this book was written for you, because Mikey Ham's writing is always so colorful and funny, and it always has something sinister just underneath it. So I'm telling you, you can read this book like you're doing a magic eye picture, either seeing all just neon nonsense or looking a little closer for the implied pain and grief behind it. But that's enough about tone. Let's talk about bones. I'm talking about S.Y.S.T.E.M.S. What does that spell? Systems. Hang on, wait a minute, just hang on, because there's one other system we need to talk about. The system by which you keep Quinns Quest going by paying just $4 a month for all the content in the Quinns Quest fan club. Nice, thanks. This review will be the last review of Quinns Quest Season 1, so if you would like to see a Season 2, or if you would just like to tunnel into new dimensions of content in the space-time continuum, head over to patreon.com/QuaQuest. Dropping on the fan club today is my full unedited interview with Slugblaster designer Mikey Ham, one of my favorite interviews I've done, and a brand new video of my campaign reports explaining exactly what my plan was and what went down in my home games of the last 3 Quinns Quest reviews: Bison, Mothership, and Slugblaster. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what I hoped for from each of these campaigns, how I planned them, where I f***ed it, and also where the campaign took us into unexpected territory, sometimes problematic, sometimes just delightful. And of course, for your $4 a month, you also get access to my blogging, which at this point has a higher word count than an entire new Quinns Quest video, and we'll be starting a channel. A Discord channel, thanks. Basically, the Quinns Quest community made it clear to me and my team that they would like a place on the internet to talk to other Tater Pig heads. That's my term, and I think it will catch on. So I thought, hey, why not let my community be trendsetters on the information superhighway? Don't break your neck. Back to the game. Right, where were we? S.Y.S.T.E.M.S. So back at the start of Season 1, I reviewed The Wild Sea, which uses the dice system from terrific RPG Blades in the Dark, where players are basically always succeeding, but there's a consequence. And this is great for any game that's like an action-packed romp, because it leads to these protracted action sequences where you're constantly on the back foot and getting knocked around. Slugblaster takes that exact same dice system again, but it also takes Blades in the Dark's zoomed out structure. You see, Blades in the Dark also has quite involved procedural rules for not just when you're trying to stab a guy or pick a lock, but the way that in between each of your heists, the city moves on like a clockwork weather system so that everybody, including the GM, is surprised by what happens next. I really cannot overstate how much this isn't what Blades in the Dark is like to play. It doesn't have tokens or a map, but Blades players will agree with me that this is basically what it feels like. TLDR, in Blades in the Dark, a single heist means that you additionally generate money for your crew, which you then want to spend on projects. The faction you robbed likes you less and so wants to get revenge. The cops now want to hunt you down, and you're stressed, and the only way to clear stress is by partaking in dangerous vices, which again, propel more consequences into the game. And so that single job you did is thrown into the game's machinery like a piece of coal into a steam engine. And now this train is building more and more momentum, racing down the tracks towards you. So Slugblaster has a bit of that. Part of what makes this game so exciting is that you just do a session 1, and then the whole rest of the campaign sort of explodes outwards from the game in front of you so that everybody, including the GM, is surprised. And then you all just hang on for dear life. So let me talk about this whole campaign superstructure in a bit more detail. It all starts with the run, which might take you 2, 3, 4 hours to play, and it's where your crew portals off to go and do sick shit in another dimension. The book has a whole table of runs that you could roll on or just read if you want to get inspired, with suggestions like create a never-ending party via an ill-conceived time loop experiment, or just get a selfie with a pony. And while your table of players can absolutely have adventures, which is just using their dangerous equipment to go to Saber McDonald's, you can also use resources to buy opportunities. Stuff like an online trend beckons all youth. Earn a mega run bonus, but only if you post before the trend sours. Also, when your table of players are in this phase of building out a run, the GM can spend Bite, which is like their bad things resource, to introduce a danger to the run. And actually, let's stick a pin in this whole conversation about the superstructure of a Slugblaster campaign. A pin like this cool pin that comes in the collector's edition of Slugblaster. So we can visit a little dimension of my own. It's Quinns' Criticism Corner. So Slugblaster has a lot of cool systems for cool people, and I like all of them, except Bite. So Bite is basically a resource the GM has, and you start a session with some of it, you're drip-fed more of it during an evening, and you can spend Bite to trigger bad stuff for the players, like something followed you home from another dimension. You can also make injuries worse or start an action sequence. So, good things about Bite are that it's kind of like this helpful little tutorial pop-up for new GMs that reminds you to put adversity into the story, but not too much because you've only got a limited amount of Bite. It also gives you a variety of ways to be mean to your players. It actively encourages you to introduce twists at the beginning or end of sessions. That's cool. But if you have learned to GM running almost anything else, you will know how to do this already because this is your job as a GM. Like, being mean to players is sometimes literally what I get out of bed for. So like, Slugblaster takes something that I do without thinking about it and now makes it so I have to do accountancy in order to do it. I know I'm being unfair with the analogy I'm about to say, but this system feels to me like those ramps they give you at bowling lanes, so you can just push a bowling ball down and it goes down the alley. And you know what? Not only do I not need that, sometimes I just want to take the bowling ball and throw it at my player's head. And you know what else? So long as we're in Criticism Corner, I really have to say something about this game's terminology. There's too much, Mikey. What were you thinking? I'm not even going to try and learn this sentence, but this is a game where you can nope a slam by taking trouble after the GM spent Bite to introduce a snag which you didn't have the kick or the boost left to deal with. But I'm not saying sentences like that in this review because I care about you and I care about our relationship. Now, Please let me out of criticism corner. Please. Not a chance. So, where were we? Yes, this game's phenomenal campaign structure. So, like I was saying, your crew starts by going on a run to another dimension, in which, at its simplest, the GM will give you a bunch of obstacles to get past, with players doing dice rolls, using their abilities, trying to get to a cool spot where they might be able to, like, film their crew doing some tricks or something, which takes the form of more dice rolls, more abilities. I'm also going to talk more about dice rolls in this game later because it's interesting. But for now, the point is that just like in Blades in the Dark, during this run, you will generate a bunch of propulsive stuff which might follow you home. The least interesting of which is injuries, because teens just recover from physical injuries. They're practically made of rubber. And mental injuries is stuff they deal with in therapy in their 20s and 30s, and so is outside the remit of this game. That said, yet another side point here. God, this review is just side points, which is a sign of how excited I am about this game. Another of the moments that I fell in love with Slugblaster was when one of my players in our first session failed a skate roll, and I narrated him landing on his tailbone from a height of about 6 feet, and that player did such a good job of role-playing, just gasping for air and being in pain and unhappy for like 20 minutes, and it was so funny. But there's also something to injuries like that happen in Slugblaster, because often in RPGs, you're narrating someone getting stabbed or shot, and none of us have experienced that before, so that description is often dead on arrival at the table. But in Slugblaster, getting whiplash in your neck from going too fast, or a love interest commenting on your physical appearance and that being an injury, this is stuff we've all experienced, so it hits harder. Just great. Anyway, I can't get distracted anymore. Going on a run in Slugblaster might also include, as well as injuries, as well as getting components that you might use to upgrade your hardware, might also include factions liking you more or less, and that generating plot opportunities if they start to love you or despise you. And God, the factions in this book are so good! You've got hateable rival skate crews, you've got smug interdimensional cops and slick brands offering shady sponsorship deals. Just pause the video on these pages if you don't believe me. But the main propulsive stuff you are building up in a campaign of Slugblaster that shoots the next scene onto the table are the game's two core currencies. Style, which you get for landing tricks, and trouble, which you get by surviving by the skin of your teeth. And basically, style, you're going to want to spend, and trouble, you have to spend. But where do you spend it? On a system that was not in Blades in the Dark, but is in Slugblaster, and is maybe the single best thing in this game, Slugblaster's beat system. This is basically a catalogue of scenes of teen drama. Whatever style of TV show your Slugblaster crew belongs in, whether it's a Saturday morning cartoon or a schmaltzy rom-com or a gritty pubescent parable, the beat sheet gives you a range of scenes flexible enough to keep each character's story moving forward. Some scenes are bought with style you've collected by succeeding, and some scenes you take on in order to clear trouble. And those are the scenes where consequences that might have been hanging over you for multiple sessions finally come crashing down. Now, if you were to just buy this book and sit at home and read it cover to cover, you might come away thinking that the beat system is cool. It's not. It's so much more than that. Listen, in my home game, the beat system was the best bit of a game made up of nothing but great bits. Let me give you an example. Let's say your player character finishes a run and they've got a bunch of style and you want to spend it on a beat that unlocks one of your character's new abilities. You might choose to do that by making a one-time purchase of your origin story. And we play out a flashback of when your character was even younger that made them who they are today. And then, poof, when you snap back into the present, your character has a shiny new power. But we're just getting started. Check this out. Each player character that you might play has their own personal arc of scenes that have to be purchased in order. For example, let's say you're playing the crew's Grit, which is the character class that simply falls over and always picks themselves back up again, Spider-Man style. But you're not Spider-Man, you're just a teenage girl or whatever. The Grit arc is that they pick something that is impossible. And then first you play out a scene in which they try it and fail it and get injured. That's your reward. Your reward for buying this scene is you just get hurt. And then the next scene in the Grit arc, which might be like several sessions later in your campaign when you buy it, you try it again and you get injured again. Then sessions later, you buy the next scene in your arc and you try that thing again. Play out a whole scene where your friends are telling you not to do it. You try it again, you get injured again, and this time you give up. your character gives up. That's what you roleplay. And then if you so choose, you can buy the fourth and final scene in the Grits arc where you try it and you do it and you become a legend overnight. But that's just the grit. If you're playing the heart, your arc involves you developing a relationship with an NPC or a PC that ends up being really harmful for your skate crew until finally you resolve that relationship in a way that is really positive, but what that means is totally up to you as a player character. Or if you're the guts, your character arc is that you get scouted and go solo for a while before eventually returning to your crew. If you buy the last scene in your arc. One of my favorite things about the arc things is you can choose not to buy the last scene, and then they get super dark. But as I said before, the beat system is not just your character getting rewarded. Beats also include scenes you have to buy in order to vent the trouble that your character is accumulating. And this is how you end up role-playing horrible scenes with your family, or if you don't want to do dark stuff with your family, or if you would prefer the variety pack of bad things happening to your teen, you can also do the angst arc, which involves you becoming a stinky cauldron of teenage self-centeredness. And I think it is inarguable playing Slugblaster, just like it was inarguable when we reviewed Heart a few episodes ago on Quinns Quest, that an RPG where you get to find out who your character is when they get hurt is twice as interesting as an RPG where your character only gets stronger from session to session. Now, some of you out there, I'm sure, are listening to me talk about the beat system and thinking, wait, so my player character's story is on railroads? This is bogus! I hate you! To which I will respond like an irritatingly understanding parent. I know it feels that way now, but trust me, this is what's best for you. This is not putting your character in a cage. This is providing scaffolding to help your character reach higher heights. Please, won't you just sit down with me and let me explain? So first, vitally, these beats are vague. When someone unlocks one, sometimes they'll have an idea for what that scene might be, but sometimes it'll involve a player reading it and going, wow, does anyone know what this means for my character? For example, my Slugblaster campaign was set in 2005, and my player, playing the Grit, decided that her impossible task that her PC would fail at over and over was getting more women into the somewhat misogynistic world of Slugblasting. My player playing the Chill and me decided that his arc of a harebrained scheme he ends up falling into was being scouted by an international squadron of kung fu cops who he trained with for a while, but eventually decided to reject because they were totally bogus. And then my player playing the Heart ended up going on like a full relationship with a woman who was just such bad news. And all of these plots were like massive, but also they're plots that I never would have put together as a GM. My players never would have asked for. And most importantly, none of those stories are written down on the beat sheet at all. And none of that is a surprise because I've literally just seen there's someone twerking on the front cover. And none of that is a surprise because of how Mikey has written this book, which is at once really specific and grounded in his vision, but also encourages you to go creatively haywire at your table.
I would rather, instead of explaining something too much, I'd rather just give 3 quick examples. One that is the most obvious example, another that sort of reinforces that the first obvious one, and then a third example that shows that you can go way further. You can interpret it a completely different way. I like to do that because I think it's just the quickest way for people to get the idea of like, okay, I get what he's going for, but he's also given me permission. Not that anyone needs permission to do anything in a role-playing game. That's the magic of it. It's like, you don't have to, I just assume that people are going to change my game.
However, the beat system isn't just good because it's vague. It's good because it is as vague as possible while still making sure your characters get proper coming-of-age story arcs. I'm gonna say an uncomfortable truth now that I believe the TTRPG community needs to hear, because broadly, we all play these games because of the amazing stories we get to tell and share with our friends, right? But again, speaking broadly, this community, its designers, its players, and certainly its evangelists are shit at telling stories. We have spent decades arguing about dice systems, experience points, world building, and railroading. We have spent hardly any time at all thinking about the most basic tenets of storytelling. The stuff that if you talk to the writer of a comic book, or the showrunner of a TV show, or the narrative designer of a video game, they will say is second nature to them. I'm talking, what are the building blocks of a good character? What are the shapes stories traditionally take? What do you need to have a satisfying ending? Now, I'm not saying we have to be good at any of those things. RPGs focused on simulationism or just raw chaos have a charm all of their own. But in some ways, when people get disheartened at what they perceive as the qualitative gap between what happens at their table and what they see on the best actual play shows, it's not a massive gulf in talent that creates that distance. It's simply that the people who make actual play often have a basic grasp on the tenets of storytelling. When those people are building characters, they are already hard baking flaws into their character. They're thinking how they're going to overcome those flaws, and they're thinking, what romances are there available to me right now so I can simmer for months and then act on in a year? And on the subject of romances, I'm going to be a bit cheeky here and try and prove the point I'm making, because I bet I can teach you something right now that you did not know about why romances are in movies. It is because as the stakes of a movie get higher and higher and higher and higher, the only way you can have the characters plausibly fling themselves into impossible odds is if love is a motivating factor. The hobbits are not traveling to Mount Doom to save the world. They're doing it because they love the Shire. That's why Lord of the Rings starts how it does. So, Slugblaster's beat system forces you with a narratological elbow around your neck to give your character a goddamn arc. A situation that shows who you really are, followed by an agonizing low point, followed by growth, followed by triumph. And additionally, because this is a game about being a crew, it also has lots of beats that force you to turn your own failure outwards and direct it at your friends. And also it has scenes where your friends are there to pick you up and help you when things get bad. I'm worried I've made this game sound heavy. It's not. It is about doing a kickflip over a quantum centipede. That is literally on the book. And this is a huge reason why I'm giving Slugblaster this simply massive, very expensive award, is because this is not a game that's asking us to do anything new or difficult, really. The setup is so winsome and delightful. Slugblaster just says, hey, let's just do a few quite specific scenes and let's do them in the right order, and the payoff is massive. Your players are still going to be having fun, rolling dice, hatching harebrained schemes. It's just that when they fail, you're going to see the corner of their lip curl up, because that gives them another trouble point, and they know the next scene in their family arc is that relationship, quote, going nuclear. All the same, I do feel like I'm at risk of alienating my viewers who want to just, eat Doritos and roll dice. So let me remind you here that this is a game where your special teenage item can be a katana. And let's talk about the dice system a little bit. So listen, if you just want to roll dice, eat chips, and narrate sick action sequences, this is still a great little game. But brace yourself, because none of your player characters or enemies in this game have any stats. No one has any skills. Because come on, none of us want to be out here in another dimension arguing about whether you can use your hack skill on a drone made of crystal, or whether sliding down a Hieronymus Bosch endless staircase on the edge of your hard light board is a dexterity or a constitution roll. Slugblaster makes a pretty good case that trying to narrate cool action sequences with your friends, but also trying to hew to their statistics and skills and numbers, is like jumping into a swimming pool with your clothes on. Because the thing about dice is that stats and skills aren't actually a game. They're just a straitjacket that limits what your character can do. Slugblaster instead says, hey, if we're gonna play a game with these dice, let's make it an actual game. Let's make it a game of resource management. Depending on your character class and equipment, you're going to have some abilities that make your style of play unique, but you're all going to have a pool of what's called kick and boost to improve your dice rolls, and a number of slots to soak up slams before you have to stop the run and go home clutching your coccyx. Each boost you spend increases the number of dice you roll on a check, and rolling more dice increases the chance you won't fail, because as in Blades, you look at the highest number you've rolled. If it's a 1 to 3, that's a disaster, 4 to 5 is a success plus some sort of pain, and if it's a 6, you're a badass. And then kick is the second resource you have to spend, which means you have more of an impact if you succeed. Kick is for when you don't just want to bypass a problem, you want to crush it. Then, and this is maybe Slugblaster's best individual rule, any player can on any dice roll in the game, the second before they roll, yell, check it! which is incidentally what I did with every important dice roll back when I was a board game journalist. If you yell check it, it means in addition to whatever your character was doing, like maybe you're running away from the cops, you are incorporating a trick into that. So you are running away and kick flipping over the puddle of acid. You're not just running out of your parents' house, you are dropping out of a second-story window on your hoverboard over their collection of priceless gnomes. If you then get a 4 or more on that roll, it means in addition to whatever you were doing, you did the trick and you get a free style point. But also, if you get anything less than a 6 on that dice roll, meaning you're gonna get a consequence, that consequence is twice as bad. So an example of that is that maybe you don't get hurt, you can get super hurt, which simply means the slam lasts for 2 sessions instead of 1, or maybe everyone in the crew gets hurt because you were showboating. Maybe you didn't just get home late, your parents called their parents. Oh God. And like, I'm just always a fan of any game where if a player is bored, they can raise the stakes slightly, but also it's just so perfect for a game about skateboarding. Oh, the girl I like is here? I'm gonna grind that rail, but with my cap pulled over my eyes. Check it. Oh, one more thing about the action in Slugblaster. If you're playing this game, I would encourage you to use the optional rule in the book that replaces the clocks, like historically we use in Blades in the Dark, with words, and you then cross out individual letters, like you're playing a game of horse. Perfect. So that's roughly how the dice system works. And one more reason that Slugblaster gets the award is that something quite surprising happens when playing this game, which is certainly compared to some RPGs I've played before and that I am playing right now. Nothing in Slugblaster is hard to learn. It's all super simple, and yet, once you have a full table of players and they all have unlocked abilities on their gear, then you have boost and kick for everyone, and boost and kick on the crew, and boost and kick on your equipment, it actually gets quite crunchy. You get negotiations between your players of like which power to use first, and like it's just nice to play an RPG that has actual thought-provoking kind of dweebery of like, oh, if I use this ability, then you use yours, you can refill my thing. But you get there through nothing but simple rules. It's just like a big matchstick structure of simple rules that gets built up over time. It's clean. Obviously, if you haven't seen it from the B-roll in this video, the product design of Slugblaster is just lovely. And then I should probably also add that if you haven't done it before in a game like Masks or Tales from the Loop, let me tell you, playing teenagers owns. Like, something I put into literally every campaign that I run is a scene or a lot of scenes where my characters are drunk or high together. Not just because my characters always have a blast doing it, but because those scenes are emotional and honest. And so, when you get these scenes which are like both hilarious and also full of this rich, like, oh, nail-biting character development, my God, like, is there anything better in an RPG night? So then what's cool about playing teenagers is that they are dumb and emotional 24/7. Like, you know that tip to always roleplay your character like you're driving a stolen car, you're in here for a good time, not a long time, thrash it around, drive it into a ditch. Teenagers are people who barely know how to drive anyway. Teenagers are so close to the extremities of being alive because everything is a first for them and everything is so important. Every love is the biggest love they've ever had. And every disappointment is them learning the hard edges of this world they've been born into. And then the solid foundation underneath all of this role-playing is that we have all been teenagers before. So we're all role-playing from a position of understanding and also catharsis. And also teenagers grow up so fast. So it's not just like understandable, but desirable that you end up playing quite a different character at the end of a campaign than you did at the beginning. Some folks in the Quinns Quest community have been telling me that because what I do in this series is I actually play the RPGs in full before I review them, I should be putting in more stories from my home games. So here goes. I'm sure you can imagine how a campaign of Slugblaster feels like when it starts. But what I think about most when I think back to my campaign of Slugblaster, which me and my players do a lot, like we left part of our souls in this world. Well, for me at least, I always think about the ending. It was maybe the single most bittersweet scene I've ever had in a TTRPG. Because what we as players knew, but our characters didn't, is that they were in the last scene of their story. This may well be what we were role-playing, like the end of the high point of their entire lives. So what the scene was I'm sure like a lot of skate movies, our campaign ended in a hospital, after one of our player characters had been injured in a way that he could not just bounce back from and would maybe never be the same again. And so the scene took place between a few other PCs in this sterile, linoleum-lined hospital corridor, and nothing really happened. It was just a conversation where the player characters talked about how they would always still be friends, though, right? And this didn't change anything, right? And then we kind of rolled credits and went into the epilogue. But what had really happened in that scene, we realized afterwards, is that in that exact moment, those teens had grown up. But of course, Slugblaster doesn't technically end on such a bum note as that. Afterwards, you then get to do the most important dice roll of the campaign. There are these two super heavy stats that you've been collecting as you play the game, Doom and Legacy, which serve no purpose other than to affect the dice pool that you roll to see what happens in the rest of your character's life. Like, it's so funny, like, you are making the same dice roll that you would for a kickflip, but it's for your entire adulthood. And maybe you get everything you wanted, but more likely you don't. And then you go around the table narrating or exchanging ideas for what the camera would see as we, in fast motion, see your character grow up, maybe get a family, maybe get a slugblasting career, or maybe just, work in a Chili's. But whatever happens at the end of your campaign of Slugblaster, I feel confident in telling you that it will hit you like a truck. And perhaps the reason for that is that Slugblaster is more than just a game book. It is also, more than anything else I've reviewed in Quinns Quest Season 1, a deeply personal artwork, almost a memoir of the author's life being a skater.
A tabletop RPG is really two products. It's a game and it's a book that you read, right? It's really hard to provide both experiences. As a game designer, I believe in making toys. But then as the one trying to make a book that's interesting to read, Slugblaster is almost a memoir of my own life, because I thought, well, I'm probably never going to write a book again. So let's, because this is so hard. So let's use this, like, I might as well write something so specific and personal to me, and just get that stuff, use those experiences to share with people.
So that's it. There's your review. All I have to add is that $20 for this PDF on itch.io is a gosh darn steal. I can see no reason why anyone who loves TTRPGs wouldn't either own a physical or digital copy of this book. Mikey Ham, if you're watching this, if you would like to accept this award, I'm afraid you can't. It was simply too expensive to manufacture, and I'm not risking putting it into the hands of the Royal Canadian Mounted Mail Service or whatever you have over there. But worry not, I shall be placing it into this cabinet for safekeeping and for the enjoyment of future Quinns Quest viewers if we do another season. Yeah, and here's Mikey paying it forward with another game that he recommends.
I'm going to spotlight a game called Foul Play. It's basically the video game Untitled Goose Game. It's the RPG of that. And it's so fun. You're just this group of geese causing mischief. The reason I think it's so good is it is the perfect game to play with your non-gamer friends and family, like at Christmas time or whatever. Everyone knows how to be a naughty little goose. Everyone knows how to make a mess, right? So the buy-in is instant, and people are just having fun right away. And it's just a perfect game for newbies and normies and stuff like that.
And so one final time, it comes time to place this game into the archives. And with that, that's actually a wrap on Quinns Quest Season 1. And we did it all without a network picking up the show. So who needs the Discovery Channel? Not us. I mean, assuming there's anyone watching, but not me. But you know what's crazy is I kind of feel relieved. The thing about being a games journalist is that you do this job because you love it, but the work is caustic. Week in, week out, your love of this thing's become slowly corroded because now you have to do it. And on time, holding the games and yourself to uncomfortable standards, maintaining this mask of wonder as your passion becomes carbonated with these dark bubbles of resentment. So if this does turn out to be the one and only season of Quinns Quest, and you are watching, don't be sad, because all that means is that I got out. And you can imagine that I'm out there somewhere, playing games with my friends for no reason other than because I love games and I love my friends. Thank you so much for watching. It won't be the last season though. How do you know that? Who are you? Wait. What the fuck is this box? Where do the games go? You really still haven't a clue, do you? Do you know what year it is? Yeah, it. Do you remember who you were playing at chess? How long have we been doing this? Let's play to find out. Wait, what are you doing with that? Don't put this in the...
Welcome to Quinns Quest.